No matter the place, the people, or the period in time, no culture is a monolith. Every society contains multitudes within itself, as each language has dialects and all art styles have variations. No two hands paint a vase the same way, no two poets tell quite the same story. Now that's hardly groundbreaking analysis, but it puts us in the frame of mind to answer some far trickier questions. Namely, when does a culture stop being that culture? How do we decide who gets included in the history of a civilization? And what does it look like at the periphery? The logical reflex is to find an anchor point, usually a culture's origin or exemplary biggest boy, and work outward from there. And this frequently works, but as cultures spread across distance and evolve across time, it gets harder to find a solid place, person, or period that can serve as our anchor. And as a result, our periphery can get real fuzzy. So in my grand quest to paint the history of capital G Greece, we'd be remiss to not explore that outer boundary, learn what makes it special, and understand how it fits into the civilization at large. And that line of inquiry brings us to Cyprus, a delightfully saucepan-shaped island in the eastern Mediterranean well outside the Aegean basin we most closely associate with Greece. Now in the context of Greek history, Cyprus is, quite simply, weird as all hell, because in comparison to the Aegean gang 500 miles northwest, Cyprus is running on a parallel track and at points looks like it's running the complete opposite direction. Now what the hell does that mean? Well, guess we better do some history. Starting at the start, the name Cyprus, or Kypros in Greek, has a contested etymology, first name dropped in Mycenaean Linear B as Kupirio back in the 1400s BC in reference to either the Greek word for cypress tree or a translation of a local Cypriot word for copper. Whichever the origin, Cyprus started mining copper in the 4th millennium BC and boomed in the latter Bronze Age as it exported the stuff as far as the Aegean and Egypt. And supplying 90% of the material for bronze earned the island some surprising renown, as Egyptian documents from the 1300s record several conversations between the pharaoh and a Cypriot king where the two address each other as brother, which would be an exceedingly bold overstep if the two were not on very comfortable terms. The letters themselves are honestly hilarious. In one of them, Cyprus effectively says, "Greetings, brother. We will definitely send you the rest of the copper we promised you. There's just a teensy plague going on, so please don't freak out. We pinky promise the copper is on its way. Just give us a minute. Also, could you send us some silver?" Take notes, Aya Nasir, that's how you handle supply chain problems. There are some other fun letters between Egypt and this kingdom they called Alashia, and the rest of the Near East seems to have known Cyprus by that same name, as it's attested across Mesopotamia, Anatolia, and Mycenaean Greece. Now, speaking of all these cool civilizations that definitely lasted forever and all had 8-packs, one of the Bronze Age's most distinctive features is the part around 1200 BC where it collapsed, but Cyprus didn't quite experience it the same way. Namely, while the Greek world completely lost writing in the 1100s after all their kingdoms imploded, Cypriots fully retained their writing system and just skipped the defining attribute of the Greek Dark Ages. But even wilder is the language itself, because rather than an alphabet, Cyprus had a syllabary where each sign maps to a syllable sound. The Mycenaean Linear B worked the same way, but here's the eldritch kicker: Cypriot writing predates Linear B by at least a century, meaning it's more likely derived from the Linear A used by the Minoans, who spoke a language other than Greek we still cannot translate. The Cypriot syllabary then represents an unbroken linguistic chain from the Minoan Bronze Age through to the Hellenistic era, and one that was only deciphered from a bilingual inscription written in Cypriot and Phoenician dating to 338 BC. With the script deciphered, we can see that the syllabary was used for 2 different languages, scattered evidence of a native Cypriot language we can't understand, and much more abundant writings in a dialect of Greek. On the one hand, hooray, we can snoop on all their diaries, but language also reveals who these Cypriots were. Here's the setup. The Mycenaeans spoke a particular dialect of Greek that largely vanished after their collapse, replaced by Ionic, Doric, and Aeolic by the start of the Polis Age. But it did not disappear entirely, and its closest cousins existed in 2 places, the inland mountains of Arcadia and Cyprus. This dialect, called Arcado-Cypriot, stayed remarkably consistent across written records, suggesting the Mycenaean presence post-collapse was not as aggressively jostled as everywhere else. Now pair all this with folk traditions from 6 Cypriot cities claiming lineage from heroes of the Trojan War. If we put on our big bronze thinking helmets, that all squares quite nicely. An existing population of Mycenaean Greeks was happily writing their language in the Cypriot syllabary during the Bronze Age. Then, after the collapse, a second wave of Mycenaeans fled the burning palaces of the mainland to find refuge on the island, giving rise to several legends of Trojan hero parentage. Instead of calamity, Cyprus flourished. Society was clearly organized well enough to keep writing stuff, new cities were founded with claims of heroic ancestry, and the cities of Kition and Ankomi built Mycenaean-style cyclopean walls with ginormous slabs of stone, a total inverse of the narrative in the Aegean. absolutely bonkers. Fast forward a few centuries, and when the mainland Greeks wake up from their Dark Age nap, Cyprus had 10 odd states spread across the island, in a curious blending of Mycenaean kingdoms and the new civic-minded polis system. That's best illustrated by a tablet from 478 BC detailing a gift of land to a family of doctors as given by, quote, King Stasichipros and the city, the Idalians. That's the king and his citizens co-signing a contract. Compared to the rest of Greece, that's really weird and really cool. There's no civic relationship quite like that anywhere else. Once again, Cyprus breaks all the rules. The exact who's who of the city kingdoms varied over the centuries, with sources listing slightly different names each time. All but a couple cities post-Bronze Age were majority Greek, with Amathus having more native Cypriot population and Kition home to and ruled by Phoenicians from Tyre. And such contact with the Near East brought Cyprus its number one deity, with the goddess Astarte arriving from Phoenicia to become the Greek Aphrodite. Cypriot myth claims their island as the spot she first stepped out of the ocean, in an elegant little reflection of history in the myth itself. So we can see that Cyprus isn't just Greece but far away, it's got a lot going on internally as well as how it interacts with the rest of the Med. Admittedly, not always on Cyprus's terms, as the Archaic and Classical periods are a revolving door of imperial hegemonies. Assyria in the late 7 and 600s, Egypt for a spell in the mid 500s, and Persia from the late 500s up until Macedon rolls up in the 330s. As far as sources indicate, Cyprus paid its tributes and was largely allowed to operate autonomously, even minting its own coinage under Persia. The kings of Cyprus actually invited Persia in, likely on the logic of, they're gonna get us, so we might as well get in on good terms. But a few decades later, at least one Cypriot had second thoughts. When Ionia revolted against Persia, Onesilos of Salamis saw an opportunity and rallied the cities in 497. Amathus chose not to participate in this narrative, and Kurion's backstabbing got Onesilos killed in battle, so Persia regained control, but the island remained rowdy for the next century and a half. Athens briefly campaigned in Cyprus in 450, and in the 380s, Evagoras of Salamis united most of the island in a push for independence, away from Persia and towards Greece. Then, at the end of that century, Cyprus got what they were after. Mostly. In 333, Alexander the Gamer Strats routed Persia in the Battle of Issus, so the kings lent their navies to support the siege of Tyre and close out the Mediterranean campaign. Good stuff. The downside is that our pal Big L died, and his Macedonian generals fought viciously over the island until Ptolemy claimed it for good. Once again, no dice on independence, but with the arrival of Alexander the Convenient Endpoint, Cyprus was culturally and now politically in the heart of the Greek world. Cyprus still has plenty going on in the Hellenistic era and beyond to Rome and the Byzantines, including some really gorgeous archaeological gems like theaters, tombs, and mosaics, but at this point it's firmly in the same track, running parallel with the rest of Greek history, no longer defined by its place on the periphery. The kings were ousted and replaced by a governor who ruled Cyprus as any other province, but most emblematic of all was the switch from the Cypriot syllabary to the standard Greek alphabet. We can imagine Macedon showing up to say, "Holy actual hell, what in Gaia's green earth are you writing? Cut that out, just use the letters! Ugh, Zeus above!" So ancient Cyprus is as distinct a part of the Greek world as history could possibly allow, an almost mirror image of the Aegean made all the more fascinating by its place in the wider Mediterranean. Cyprus is not just more Greece, it is way the hell weirder than that and way cooler for it. Thank you for watching. To briefly step outside of official history business, TM, I hope you're all holding up okay. There are a lot of vulnerable people in our lives who are now at risk from what will happen in the next 4 years. It's scary. The best thing you can do is to get off social media, that shit is poison, and instead focus on being a good neighbor. If you feel scared or powerless, the response is not despair, it's action. Start small and take care of the people in your life. We'll stay right here telling stories to help you laugh, learn, and stay sane. As always, there's more work to be done, so I'll see you in the next video.